So hello everyone, my name is Paul Stevens. I'm a journalist in the short-term rental and hospitality space, and I'm really looking forward to discussing regulations, forthcoming changes, EU regulation with our expert panel today. So I'll ask you all to just introduce yourselves briefly. Christine, I might as well turn to you first.
Great. So Christine Mukamayanja, Public Affairs Manager, Short-Term Rentals at Booking.com. In my role, I oversee our global short-term rental regulatory strategy, at the moment particularly focused on our EU markets. In my capacity, I'm responsible for conducting research, working with authorities, advising, and also collaborating on upcoming short-term rental regulations, and then also carrying out advocacy initiatives, particularly for ourselves as a platform and also for our hosts and partners. I would describe my role as one whereby I serve sort of as a builder of bridges between us as a platform, authorities, hosts, property managers, to really ensure that the short-term rental industry optimizes for all participants involved and stakeholders, while also really addressing the legitimate concerns that are in the industry.
Thank you, Christine. And Eduardo?
Hi, thank you everyone. I'm Eduardo Miranda. In one part, I'm the president of the Portuguese holiday home we call Local Accommodation Association, where I've been mainly, I would like to do other things like professionalization, but mainly discussing about regulation for the last 9 years. And also I help the European Holiday Home Association board in aspects of representing at the European level and the Commission and the EU level the industry.
Last but my name is Joaquim.
I'm Joaquim Leal. I'm country manager for Spain and Portugal of Interhome. I'm the only Spaniard of this group, so if you have something related to Spain, here I am. And I'm the one who is struggling with regulations, because besides dealing with them, we need to make money. I guess you do as well. So we are trying to keep the business going on, despite the many complications that they are coming. And that's it, basically.
Thank you, Joaquim. Christine, I'll come to you first. I know you're working very closely on the EU STR regulation, so perhaps you can talk about that a little bit, or a little bit of an overview of some of the work you're doing on regulatory changes.
All right, great. So EU short-term rental regulation. Just to provide a little bit of background in terms of how this regulation came to pass. So prior to February 2024, when the regulation was adopted, we were existing and still are existing in a very fragmented regulatory landscape when it comes to registration schemes as well as data sharing in the short-term rental space. When you look at hosts, there were a number of a web of complex rules when it comes to how registration is supposed to be carried out, with different local jurisdictions having different rules within a member state. And then on the other angle, when it comes to data sharing, us as platforms, when it came to sharing data with authorities, we had so many different means that authorities were requiring us to share data: email, CSV files, portals. The timelines in which we had to share data and the cadence differed from monthly to bi-monthly and so forth. And then also even just the different ways that we had to send via API solutions and so forth. And so the EU short-term rental regulation was really born out of this need to dismantle the fragmentation that we were seeing in the short-term rental space. And by so doing, it's now come in to create a harmonized framework when it comes to registration procedures. Specifically now under the EU short-term rental regulation, there has been a simplification of rules for hosts and partners. such as within a member state. Now, when authorities are building out registration procedures, they have to ensure that it's online, it's free of charge, that a unit would not be subject to more than one registration procedure. And then on the angle of us as platforms, when it comes to sharing data with authorities, what the EU STRR has done is it has now given us only 6 data points in terms of data that we have to share with authorities. The activity data, such as the number of nights that a unit is rented for, the guests in the unit, the country of residence. We also have to share the URL of the listing, the registration number as well, and the address of the unit. And then the EU short-term rental regulation has also simplified the cadence that we have to share short-term rental data with authorities. Specifically, we now only have to share on a monthly basis. And then lastly, there has been the introduction of what is known as the single digital entry point. And what this single digital entry point is it's an API-based solution that each member state, if they now want to get data from us as a platform, they have to build it out and implement it from a national level of government. So we will no longer be sending out data to regions or cities. And so there really has been a simplification for us as platforms. And I just want to highlight what's really key is that the law under Article 10(2)(a) specifically specifies that it is the EU Commission that is responsible for building out the technical specifications for this API single digital entry point that authorities will now be receiving data from us. And what that means is that we have been, as platforms, along with also member states, working with the EU Commission to build out what's known as a prototype of the single digital entry point that member states will then use to build out this common system API solution. In a nutshell. Not complicated at all.
Thank you, Christine. I'll come to you next, Eduardo. You're approaching this from both a Portuguese standpoint and a wider European perspective too. So what can you add about some of the regulatory changes we're seeing at the moment?
Okay, well, first of all, try to understand regulation as a symptom. It's a symptom of a battle, it's a symptom of a change in society that is going on, different pressures, and regulation is the way this symptom appears for us. And at this moment, at the European level, you have different things, and it happens also at the national level. There is big pressures in terms of the cities, in terms of member states, because of the housing problem, to try to restrict short-term rental. And the first thing that usually member states do, and the European Commission, the European Parliament also did, because this is typical from regulators, that, okay, until we decide exactly what kind of regulation, let's guarantee one thing, tax. So it's usually the first, so you see the tax things going. So you have two areas in tax that already went on. One that was not specific for short-term rental, that's tax 7, basically saying, okay, the platforms, including in short-term rental, they have to provide for the governments, the authority, tax authorities, all the information from the advertisers. So this is already being provided. Most of the countries didn't start doing the monitoring system, but they have the data. They have the data by advertisement of how much you're doing. So just one note. Second part of the text is the last one, that was the VIDA, that is the VAT. And that is going to apply directly to short-term rental, but was a big negotiation, the European Holiday Home Association, and that was done by Victoria, that is our Secretary General, that is there. She was with the platform, with the member state, with the associations. There was huge work she did. And basically, what they approved is, okay, let's go on with the VAT on short-term rental. But in the end of the negotiation, they allowed to have what they call opt-in and opt-out. Some countries can say, I don't want this, I don't think short-term rental is exactly like hotels and whatever. They will be able to opt out in 2028, is the beginning of the deadline. And they will also be able to opt out or in other things like, you know, the small private ones that are exempt from VAT. Are we going to make the platforms charge the VAT in their names, or we're going not to opt on this. So they will have these options there. So that's the other part of the VAT that will have some impact in some countries. In Portugal, we already have the VAT for a long time. VAT looks like neutral, but when you're starting from zero and don't have VAT, it has some effects. In Denmark, I think it's 22 or 23, I don't believe. That is a huge impact. And the third one is the short-term rental initiative that you already explained perfectly, but basically behind the scenes, the cities, what they wanted in the end was allow me to restrict short-term rental, because you have this thing that is called a service directive saying, okay, service should be free. But then you want to restrict service, and we want to restrict because we have a housing problem. And the decision of the Commission was, okay, we are not going at this moment to go for allowing or not allowing restrictions or whatever. We're not going this. The service directive still is. You have to be proportional to make restriction, whatever. This first thing is that if you're talking about regulation, you need data. You are asking data. The short-term rental is complaining about data. You're doing regulation without data. The cities want the data from the platforms, not only to know the data, but they want to control if they put 90 days if you're leading. So let's do the first part is registration system. We are going to create a harmonized, asked by the platforms, harmonized system of registration, harmonized system of communication, as explained very well, and we are going to share data. And with data, you can make good regulation. That's the thing. We hope so. And the last one that is going on, that is the next big battle, and it's the battle of our lives, and that's the battle that's really behind us, is the housing crisis. This pressure is really big, and it's going to European level. So it was created the first commissioner of housing. We didn't have a commissioner. Now there is a commissioner of housing. So all the pressure and all the lobbies of the cities, of the housing movements, of the political parties, of everyone involved is going to be there. He's starting his works. The European Holiday Home Association has a meeting in a little with him. And that is where the battle is going to start, because basically the pressure from the cities, from the member states, they're with the housing question, and they're very opposed to some tourism, is we want the Commission, we want the Parliament, the European Parliament, to be more strong and allow us to be more restrictive, because they have the service directive. That is the pressure behind.
Do you think all of those pressures are contributing to this more fragmented regulatory landscape then that we're seeing at the moment?
The pressure, we can talk about that in the second part. The pressure comes from housing. The housing is a top political issue. It's a big problem. When it becomes political issue, it's an interest of the mayor, Al-Qaeda, of the government, and whatever. So they are doing the pressure because they are feeling this pressure. It's a matter of being elected or not. It's a matter of keeping in power or not. It's a huge matter. So they are forcing and they are anticipating, sometimes without knowledge or whatever, just to answer for this public perception. Sometimes the public to do something, to regulate. And that comes with the fragmentation. We can talk about that later.
Thank you. And Joaquim, of course, I think you operate 40,000 homes or something like that in various different European markets. So what are some of the key regulations that you're seeing and that are affecting your business?
Well, basically, they are affecting all of them to our business. But and at the moment, we are trying to extinguish fires all over, because we have everywhere, we have different situation, and we are kind of juggling with the regulations, no? In fact, and we need to have our eyes all over, and this weekend I think we need to have them in Portugal because of the elections, and is that right? in 2 weeks. So again, we are just depending on which party is getting in, and depends on how they are going to deal with what you say, Eduardo, with the housing thing, no? But at the moment in Spain, for example, we have, I think, different kind of regulation, no? There are some of them, they are affecting because they are administrative workload that it's generating a lot of hassle, and it, of course, it implies more time in I don't know, in organizing the data for the police, or just to creating this new ventanilla única, which is now in Spain, that we need to bring to get a new license for all the properties that we have the license, or in the Comunidad Valenciana, we have some of the license, they are okay if you are just renting below 10 days, and then you can rent above 10 days with a different thing. So these are kind of administrative things. There are other things that, of course, they are just direct bans, and we have in some places, like in Catalonia now, or even in Mallorca, some places you cannot get a license. So business, we need to make sure that we get some new business in a different way. I don't know, we try to get it from somewhere else. And there are other things as well which are affecting, which are not bans, but somehow they are kind of a ban. And now I'm referring on how the communities, they need to allow or to permit to do this business in a certain block of communities in Spain, where we're having the problem that 2 days ago, I just asked all my colleagues from different countries in Europe, what are the regulations that you have in France, in Italy, in the UK, in the Nordics, and they just sent me a lot of things, and I said, what a puzzle that we have, no? It's an amazing, incredible, different thing, no? And I remember, for example, the French was saying, that is crazy because now they can just forbid, they can just say no to holiday rentals in a community with 50% approval. And I said, okay, you are lucky, because now in Spain, just to have a new license, you need that 2/3 of the whole community just says it in favor. So all these kind of things, they are really, really constraining our business. But nevertheless, we are still growing. So for me, I still see that this business and somehow our business, we are organized in a way that like we are kind of a lot of small property managers, because we have around 150 offices all over Europe, and from those offices we just run these properties. And I say, okay, well, but still we have the opportunity, because if this is a hassle for us, that is going to be a much hassle for the owners. So most probably that will give us the opportunity to get some owners that they will say, okay, you take care of it, because you know how to do it, you have the resources maybe to generate, to have the systems and everything in place, so you can provide us the right solutions. And this is how we are dealing now with the situation.
Thank you, Joaquim. Christine, you're close to this from a platform perspective too, so what's your opinion on why these changes are being brought in? There's a lot of reasons put out there, but what do you think?
Yeah, I would say it's really the need, as Eduardo was saying, the need for data. It's very evident that there is an importance in making policies that are driven by data. And when we talk about the issues, the housing crisis, and then also there's over-tourism, the media narrative has pinpointed that short-term rentals are the cause and the driver of all the issues that we're seeing when it comes to these crises. But I often feel that what's missing in the debates is the benefits that short-term rentals bring. For example, income generation, tax revenue growth, or budding businesses. And instead, what's happening is that short-term rentals are frequently being conflated as the driver of these problems in over-tourism and housing without robust evidence to show the causal link between short-term rentals and these issues. So what ends up happening is we have policies that are being created based on perception versus facts, and we're really missing the real lever to create the changes. So I think because of some of these struggles that we've had in the industry between differentiating between correlation and causation when it comes to short-term rentals' role in the crises that we're seeing, has been born that need for data.
Thank you, Christine. Eduardo, Christine's already mentioned over-tourism. I don't know if it's a term we want to use or not, or we talk about media coverage, even failures in infrastructure policy are things that I talk about quite a lot. But what's your opinion on this?
Okay, so the first thing, and it's important to understand what's going on and the strategy used, is understanding what is the war and what's the fields of battle, okay? So the biggest question here is housing. Then come secondary things, neighbors. Then come secondary things, the war of hoteliers. They are helping to heat the fire, but the fire is on housing. Because if it was not housing behind, it would be just a competition dispute with the hoteliers. And the public doesn't want to know about this. It's a problem of who is better at lobbies or whatever. In this case, no, we are crossing a public perception thing, that is housing. And so this is the problem. The problem is that we are in a very delicate situation in terms of housing. In terms of housing, you have left and right politically, and a lot of more, but generally speaking, okay? The left thinks that you are the capitalist owners that are taking the house and the enemies, and it's a very nice kind of enemy for them to attack. And in the right, you have another problem. Okay, they are pro-entrepreneurship, whatever, but also they are the owners' parties usually. And so you have the problems of the neighbors, because most of them, they don't do short-term rental, and they see you as a threat for, neighborhood. And that is the question. You are a threat and a threat in both sides. And then you have the common people, public perceptions. You have the world divided in tenants and owners. Tenants think you are a threat because they heard that maybe you are helping to increase the prices, whatever. They don't gain anything, only eventually you are the problem for them. And then you have the owners that say, if I want to do short-term rental, I'm in favor. If I don't thinking of short-term rental, I may have a neighbor that's going to create problems and I don't get anything with that. So again, we are a threat. And then comes public perception. The question is that, as you mentioned very well, the public perception is about emotions, not about data. And the worst emotion and the most strong emotions that you have is fear and threat. And that's what fighting, you can bring a lot of positive things, what you do, and we have to say a little bit more of the studies, the positive. But when you have in the other side a potential threat, this worth 5 or 10 times more than your message. So you're in a very unbalanced war here. And that, I think, is one of our biggest challenge in this. So we have this fragile position, and we have to have a long-term vision, strategy, and a short-term. The long-term strategy, each one has its own, I have mine, but basically, you have first to neutralize the attacks, the threat. You'll never convince anyone that you are good and only brings good for the community, because they see you as a threat. But at least if you neutralize, you get an ambient that is better for negotiation. Then you have normalized, you have to have the regulation, so they feel like they have some kind of control, because they don't feel, the cities don't feel they have control, the neighbors don't feel they have control, and the regulation is a way to do that. And then there is another part, mutualize, doesn't matter, and then you go to stabilize, and it's going to take quite a lot of years. And then you need this strategy, and the strategy is about the political context. In my opinion, you have to try to propose the regulation before. And it's very dangerous to do that, but you have to know the political context. As a panel before, if you propose a legislation in a government that is very anti or opposed to short-term rental, or have already came up with very strong things, maybe it's coming worse than that. So you have to prepare your strategy and wait maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 years for a favorable. And then when this better ambient comes, you have to go strong for regulation and take advantage of the opportunity. And that's, I know it's complicated because who's investing is in this, it's not stable, and what we need is stability there. But that is the game is going to play. Until we have a housing crisis, we are always going to have this kind of threats. We have to try to neutralize a little bit, and with the stretches, try to come with regulations that people and the municipalities or whoever feel a little bit more controlled. Essentially, our objective is to become less and less a political asset. Basically, that's the long-term strategy.
Joaquim, did you want to add something to that?
I think Eduardo is the master here. No, I think you have a very broad view of the whole situation. But yes, in Barcelona, for example, this kind of housing issue has been happening now. And I think I have the feeling, and not getting into politics, no, but I have the feeling that we are doing every step in the wrong way. So we are just limiting the rental prices. We are just not giving security to the owners so they can rent everything. So you are increasing the amount of properties which are not just empty. We are not making the right policies, and I feel that it's a pity. I don't know. Maybe it seems too easy to me, no? But I have the feeling that we are not making the right steps. And even I was talking the other day to a friend of mine who is very linked in his political view, and he was saying, I think the same. And I said, maybe it's, but yes, they have a pressure. It's what Eduardo was saying, they have a big pressure on this housing issue. And, but I still think that we are the solution. We are the solution. Because sometimes we only talk about Lisboa or Oporto or Barcelona or Madrid or Malaga, no? But we still have plenty of places where there is a lot of houses that can be used or we can share. There are a lot of possibilities there, but we need more. That's why we need these associations to be strong. We need to really get associated and really fight in a common voice. And maybe we have different interests because maybe a platform works different than a property manager, that association, etc. But we need to go together with a single voice.
Thank you, Joaquim. Christy, I see you nodding there, but what role do you think booking platforms like a booking.com have in, I mean, Joaquim mentioned it, the right policies, but what role do booking platforms like booking.com have in advocating and pushing for more fair and proportionate regulations?
Yeah, so I think for platforms really being seen in the space as a collaborative partner is super important, particularly when it comes to compliance and building out and designing our interface in a way that adheres to the regulations that are being pushed out, and also carrying out education campaigns for our partners and our hosts to ensure that they're kept up to date with the new developments and rules. For example, with the Spanish decree, when that came out, what our engineers and our development teams did is they built out license fields, particularly for the national registration codes for the decree, and that's going to be up and running by the first week of June. So really just showing that we're here to be, as Joaquim was saying, a united front in this space. And then also carrying out engaging conversations with policymakers to make sure that we're really advocating for our partners who might not be in the room at the table with authorities as well, being that voice.
Thank you, Christine. Same question really, Eduardo. What's the role of associations to play moving forward for advocating for these sorts of regulations?
Basically, yes, you need one voice. I could say, well, and if you have more than one association in the same place, yeah, it's a problem. But you have to try to coordinate this one voice, because it's already difficult with all the fragilities that we said, with all the opposition, with all the public, polarized thing. And if you're divided internally, the politicians love it. They love it. So, oh, yes, but your friend from the other association just said this. And they will take the exact sentence and kill it, destroy. Even when I say that association is not only the operators, like the managers and the owners, but also with the platforms. We cannot... Even if we have some different agendas, we can, okay, let's see what's common. That's what I did in Portugal. I talked with all the platforms of the small ones and the big ones, the corporate, the professional. We have everyone to be together. Okay, so about this and these topics, we don't talk about that. But this is the common ones, so let's go for this. And because the most important thing is you have to have a common narrative and a common message, a very simple one. If you start shooting for everywhere, you don't pass your message. And this common narrative has to be about short-term rental as a whole and this place in the society, You are the one helping the houses that are usually empty or whatever, the small people doing the... And that narrative is essentially and has to be a common narrative.
Joaquim, do you want to add something in 20 seconds?
No, nothing else.
Okay, a big thank you to our panel, and thank you everyone for listening too.
We still have 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
What do you want to say in 10 seconds?
Thank you.
Thank you.